Hi, I'm Diana, the artist behind MyMcDoodles. Welcome to my channel. Hi, welcome back to my pattern series. This is all part of the Pretty Pattern Challenge from Instagram. Today we'll be making the plaid. I start by creating a document that's a square, so I'm going to use 3000 by 3000 pixel document. You can use whatever size you wish. I find it easiest to work in a square document. So plaid might seem like it's going to be a complicated pattern, but it's actually fairly simple. It'll repeat really easily, and it can be like a really fun, easy way to make a big impact, and it's actually not that hard. So the first thing I'll do is I'll set up my canvas. So I would like to go to the Actions menu, go to Drawing Guide. It makes a grid. It defaults to these small squares, but you can change the size. So I press Edit Drawing Guide, and down here you can change your grid size. So for this, I really just need 4 boxes on the screen. So it's 1500 pixel length across and vertically to get 4 equal boxes since my document is 3000. So I press done, and now I have my canvas set up. I can see that there is lines through the center of this canvas. So I'm going to start with it broken up like this, and I'll show you some tricks to make sure that you are making your pattern like perfectly level so that it all lines up properly. This is the color palette I'll be using. It's available on my website in the freebies section. I'll put the link in the description of this video. So I would like to just make this as quickly as possible. I'm going to use one color in multiple layers, and then I'll be able to recolor it later to adjust it to my liking, but it's really easy to set it up in advance just using one color. So I chose this pink, and what I'll do is make stripes across and vertically. And as long as they are perfectly level and they line up on each side, it'll repeat seamlessly. So my first layer, I'm going to use, instead of drawing it with a brush, you could do that and just hold your pen down, and while you're still holding it down, press your finger down. It'll make it perfectly level, but this has some wiggle to it, and so this side might not match up perfectly with this side. It's not a big deal. There are ways you can fix that by like transforming your image a little bit, like flipping it and then like working on the center. But I want to do this as quickly as possible right now, so I'm not going to do anything besides a solid stripe across. I'll come back and do a more whimsical pattern later. So stay tuned. I'll put a timestamp on this video too. So if you would like to make one that's a little more interesting, not just straight lines across, you'll have the option to do that. So what I'll do instead is use the select tool, the rectangle, and turn on color fill. Now when I draw a rectangle, it's going to fill in this selection with the color I chose. So there's my first stripe. This does not matter if it's in the center. Okay, make sure it goes completely to the other edge. And then I want to have like varying thicknesses. I don't necessarily want the same thickness in the entire pattern, so I'm just going to make a new layer and do it again. And these are going to be randomly spaced. I don't want it to look too matchy-matchy. Let's do it one more time. So now I have 3 stripes to work with that are different widths. I would like to group those together and then duplicate that group, turn off my original, and just save that. Now I'm going to work with this group here. I want to duplicate it again and just kind of fill up my canvas with these stripes. Be careful not to go into the top edge there, or just if you do, keep in mind that it's going to repeat. So you have to remember that it's going to bump up against this bottom edge here. So you just keep it in mind with how you want your stripes to look. One thing to keep in mind is just to make sure that these are going all the way to the outer edge. If for some reason it's nudged and it's not, and you can get it lined back up, you should be able to get it lined back up. But if you can't, you can go to freeform, and then you can make this as long as you want. Procreate automatically crops off whatever falls off the edge of the page anyway. But that's one way to resize it. If you accidentally nudged it and then it's like cropped, you can just drag it out and make it the full length again. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill up my canvas horizontally with stripes. So I filled up my canvas horizontally, and now I want to do them vertically. I'm just going to use the ones I have and flip them. It's a really fast way to fill it up. So what I'll do, I like the way these are lined up. If for some reason you need to move things around, you can just go into your individual groups and scooch them around. I like it, so I'm just going to flatten everything down. Except for my original. I'm going to keep that. Right here, the ice cream truck. It's cute music. Okay, so I have my horizontal stripes here. I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm just going to rotate it. So I just want to grab that one layer, click on this arrow, and then press rotate 45, and then rotate 45 again. For some reason it looked like it moved it. And I can see that this pattern, you'll notice things as you go. These are way too bold. I don't want it to be that thick. So I'm just going to go back in. I saved my originals, so it makes it really easy to adjust things. So I'm just going to go back in, adjust it a little bit thinner so that it's not so bold when it flips and repeats. And I'll be back here in a sec. I'm just going to follow the same exact process I already showed you, and I'll be back with new horizontal lines. Okay, so I've set up my horizontal lines again, and I went ahead and recolored them while I was at it. I made everything random. You could just color one group and then repeat it and duplicate that group the whole way up, but I wanted mine to be all randomly colored, so I just recolored each one. And the easiest way for me to do that is to make a layer on top of the stripe, drop in the color, press clipping mask, and then if I like the color, you just press merge down. So I'm going to select all of these, and let's see, let's group those together rather than flattening them down, because I don't want to have to do this again if I don't like it. And then we're going to duplicate that group and rotate that whole group. That'll be our vertical lines. This is our horizontal lines, so I'll just name it here. And this will be our vertical lines here. Okay, so we're going to flip these ones. So make sure it's selected, grab this arrow and press rotate 45 degrees twice, and it'll rotate it 90. And then for some reason it's bumping it up, so there's a white gap down here. So just make sure it all lines up properly before you continue. And if we turn on snapping, it should take it straight to the edge. That looks like it got it. And if for some reason it didn't, you could just select and then press freeform and just stretch it. It'll only stretch it this direction, and that'll get it off the border so that it's all seamless when you repeat it. This line right here might be a problem because when it repeats, let's see, I'm not sure if it's cutting anything off. Okay, it's not cutting anything off because it's snapped to the edge. So it's okay. It looks like it fell off the edge, but it's all right. So that's my pattern, and then I'm just going to test it out to make sure that it repeats the way I think it's going to. So I'm going to group those two together. That's my entire pattern. And I don't want to flatten it down because I don't want to have to do all this again. So I'm going to duplicate it. Oh, there's too many layers. Okay, that's okay. So instead of flattening down the whole pattern in case it needs to be edited, I'm going to go back out to my gallery and then just duplicate this whole artwork and then save this one as my original. And then I have a copy that I can flatten things down and edit and whatever, and not have to worry that I'm going to redo all of this work if I don't like it. And then let's just flatten down this whole group. Copy it 3 times so you have 4 to work with. And then grab the first one, go to this arrow, make sure this is on uniform now, because if you were going in freeform, it's going to make it all wonky. So just make sure your settings are back on uniform, and it's the snapping is, the magnetics are turned on and the snapping is turned on, and both of these sliders are all the way up, and that'll make it snap to the grid and the edges really nicely. So I'll grab the first one, I'm just going to shrink it down to 1/4 of the size, and it snaps right in. And then get the next one and do the same thing. And we're just going to fill all 4 quadrants to test our pattern, make sure it looks the way you think it's going to look, because sometimes once you repeat it, it does not look the way you thought. And just make sure everything's lined up. That looks like it's not lined up, it's nudged somehow. It's always good to check it so you don't post it for print or for sale and it's not repeating the way you thought it was. So it's not correct, so I'm going to delete those back out and just check my original. Okay, it looks okay. It might be when I resized it. So let's try it again and just make sure. So instead of making 3 copies of the whole screen, you can resize it to 1/4 of the screen as long as it's exactly snapped into the grid. And mine said it was 1500 pixels square, so I know it is. And just duplicate that, and then that won't leave any room for error when you're resizing. They'll all be exactly the same size, and then you know your pattern is working properly. That looks better. So it must have just been a problem when I resized it, because everything looks like it's repeating the way I expected. Now you can just check on your, it's hard to see because we made a plaid pattern, but on your grid lines, just check and make sure that everything lines up where the pattern is going to like repeat, and it looks fine. So this was like our clean kind of plaid. I'd also like to make one that's a little bit more whimsical, where the lines aren't perfectly straight and maybe a little bit more like this, like a little bit inky or wiggly. But this is the same procedure that you would follow. And as long as you get your ends to be perfectly level across from each other and the same width, it'll repeat as a seamless pattern. So if you plan to watch part 2, I'll see you there. And if you want to stop here and just post your clean plaid pattern, then I would love to see it. Make sure you tag me at MyMcDoodles if you post your work on Instagram. And thank you for watching. If you're watching part 2, I'll see you next.